Yeah, so, God, you've been there for, considerable time now. Things rapidly changing in the market out there, situations, and obviously technology flying along. We've never seen an industry change so much as what's been happening, and and what's coming. It's kind of still coming at us. So, can you just give us a little bit of background? For Skynet 5 to Skynet 6, 36 billion. Investment there to do a complete refresh, and just what are the opportunities that are coming with that, and what are the new challenges, because it's a whole different play field out there.
So I think the changes that we've seen are quite significant. So I said we entered the military space communications game in November 1969, and we built up a very strong UK military capability for managing spacecraft, managing flying spacecraft, for managing the ground infrastructure, designing the ground infrastructure. We had a complete signals unit within the Air Force, augmented by the other services, that had been built up over 40-odd years. And then 2003, at the stroke of a pen, all of that got transferred into industry, and the UK skill set and experience was wiped out. And then we get a government decision, right, why don't you just do it all again in-house? It can't be that difficult. And you say, well, it took us 40 years to build it, the stroke of a pen to kill it, and you want me to bring it all in-house without any support infrastructure, training, career profiles, or people. So there's a challenge. So the real change we've got at the moment is trying to work out how do we do the things we need to do to be able to become the decision maker and not just the customer. Because if you go back to that crayon diagram, me and my team are accountable for ensuring all that works. I haven't done that for 20 years, so I need to make certain I've got a team that understands that. That takes time to build up. You can't just do it overnight. So that's one of the real big challenges. The other big challenge we've got is a changing industry, and a rapidly changing industry. We're getting a lot of, certainly in what we call the LEO and the MEO space, we're seeing new entrants. And some of the time it's very difficult to work out what is their unique selling point, and not to get seduced by the shiny sales brochures, which unfortunately very senior officers do. So half our time is trying to explain to them, it looks new, it looks shiny, but actually there's 4 other people over here doing something similar. So it's understanding that change in the market dynamic. The change in threat, I said, the pace of threat change is the thing that worries me more than anything. But what is really also changing is our relationship with our international partners. We always used to be very much dependent on the US. If the US wanted us to buy one of their services, it was very much just this is what you get, take it or leave it. We're now seeing a lot more direct relationships with partners to do, how can we do things collaborative? How can I access some of their services without necessarily buying into it? How can they access some of ours on a reciprocal basis? So it's the opportunity to get after other nations' capabilities in a much quicker way than we have ever done before, because Pete and I have been working with the US for years. You can have 5 years with an arrangement with the US, come to the agreement, and then the State Department imposes ITAR, and you've got another 5 years. Whereas I can go to another nation who has a similar service in an area I need it, I can get a deal done in 3 months. So it's that opportunity of having access to a worldwide market through government-to-government arrangements, not just industry-to-government arrangements.
Yeah, and that gives you that agility, or helps with
Yes.
that agility. And what other aspects are you bringing into your planning and the process? That'll give you more agility, just to be able to move quicker and to address what's out there in the market, but also the new technology as well.
Exactly, but it also allows us to recognise the fact we don't fight alone. We fight with NATO, we fight with, that sounds bad, we fight with NATO. I was going to say we fight with our European allies, but that's probably a different debate to be had. But we fight alongside NATO, we fight alongside our European allies. It'd be awfully nice if we could communicate alongside our European allies. And that's the problem we have at the moment of if I were to lose one or both of my ground stations, I've got nowhere else to go. If I can put ground terminals in an Italian ground station, if they could put terminals in a UK ground stations, if I could put terminals in a Polish ground stations, and diversify from a international partnering perspective, then we may not get full capacity or full resilience, but it makes it a lot harder to take us all out at the same time. So it's that ability to drive down the risk, as Pete said. I know what risk I'm carrying that I know about. I have no idea what risk I'm carrying that I don't know about, and neither do the operational commanders that we talk to. So if we can identify some areas we do know and get after those, particularly with partners, because it's in our collective interest to resolve these things, then it's a quick win for all of us.
Yeah, that kind of leads us to the, you've got that risk, as you say, in different areas, but the commercial side of things, working with commercial opportunities as well, just to spread that risk around. Is that, how is that going so far with what's out there now with the newer systems that they're coming along with?
So there's a risk and reward balance that we need to manage. Putting all your eggs in one basket and getting a huge economy of scale of buying into one solution is really attractive to, and I'll call them the bean counters. I'm not being rude because I am an accountant myself, so I know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. But it is very attractive to go, right, we're going to buy a load of Starlink or Starshield terminals, and that's going to be our LEO solution of choice. But you also have the vulnerability then of both, as we've seen with Starlink already, the political interventions outside of our control, whether or not you can assure it, technical risks, unknown vulnerabilities that suddenly take out all of that. So do I then go for, I'll have a split economy of Starlink and OneWeb? That costs me more because it's a challenge at the moment of I then need to buy and service multiple terminals. The user community's got to go out with multiple terminals. So it's understanding that is a solution of all of one the right thing, or is a solution of multiple or a number the right thing? And it comes down to the individual use cases. And I think that's some of the work that Pete's been doing with Skies in understanding the use cases, the work that the joint user on behalf of the operational community is doing with understanding the operational context of how these terminals and capabilities will be deployed. We've historically done a lot of this, sat in a nice cosy office in Corsham just outside of Chippenham. We're now much more proactive in understanding and engaging with the operational community. But ultimately it comes down to how much money do I have? Can I afford diversity, or am I forced to just go with get the best deal you can for the greatest number and we'll take the risk?
Yeah, we've kind of heard that word sovereignty, and flashing around, and the only countries that's going to be able to really go fully is the ones that can afford it, you know, and then there's going to have to be some kind of compromise on what level of service you get after that. I know Dan Goldberg was at Euroconsult, World Business Week, saying we're taking our product to the EU companies, and we can provide you with a sovereign service, but it's kind of like a soft sovereign service till Iris comes in. And so it brings you to what Peter said about all these kind of primes, all these services come with you with multiple promises. You know, how do you actually make that decision that this is really what we need and we can go with these levels?
I think it comes down to, firstly, this word sovereignty. If you ask 3 people what sovereignty means, you'll get 5 different answers. For us, it means 2 very, very simple things. And I'll use old language, and then we've got some new language. But fundamentally, it's down to freedom of manoeuvre and operational advantage. Can anybody stop me from using our capability? And can I use it in a way I want to give the warfighter that operational advantage that they depend on? And if I look at it from a couple of scenarios, so if I look at OneWeb, and I buy into OneWeb, it's not a UK company, but a UK invested company, there is always somebody who can deny me access to the terminals I've got if they don't like how I'm using them. You just need to look back at the early days of Ukraine when Starlink turned off access, SpaceX turned off access to certain Starlink terminals which were being used by Ukraine for purposes they didn't like. So that is not a freedom of manoeuvre. So partly for us, sovereignty is about ensuring that the only people who can control what we're doing is us. Operational advantage is effectively the niche capabilities that we have that nobody else has. If you look at something like Iris, or Iris Squared, is that sovereign? Because who ultimately is controlling it? Individual nations have invested, but individual nations do not control it. So there is a debate to be had. We also now, from a UK perspective, look at sovereignty from an industrial base. So more and more we're looking at how do we provide operational freedom? You do it through the supply chain, largely. So what are our critical technologies that we must absolutely own as a nation, that we control as a nation? And what are those technologies actually we're quite happy to go and buy from somebody else? And that's a fundamental shift. So what we're trying to do now is say, right, if ultimately sovereignty is about freedom of manoeuvre and operational advantage, how do you actually achieve that? In the past, we basically said the entirety of the thing had to be built in the UK. If it was built in the UK, then it was fine. But we didn't really look at second order, third order, fourth order suppliers. Now what we're trying to do is go, right, these systems or these subsystems, we absolutely want it top to bottom UK. The rest of it, I'm less worried about. So giving suppliers clarity on what they need from a UK investment perspective, and that will drive price, and what they can use from a wider supply chain, which will drive efficiency. And that's the balance we're trying to do. And that's how the wideband satellite service procurement, that is very much based on critical technologies and technological capital as a way of driving the right level of sovereignty.
So just on the quick one on the frequency bands, you said you were bringing Ka band into the UK. I imagine that's a few challenges to come with there. We're seeing a kind of revival of UHF as well in the things. Is there anything you can give us info on there?
And Pete mentioned it, the UHF is a hot topic at the moment. Like I said, we're in discussions with Thales Alenia Space for a UHF, a single UHF satellite. But we also know that UHF is a technology that is easily jammed. Whether or not it's a hostile jamming from an adversary, or it's a taxi company, or as we had a while ago, an Indian TV station. So it is a technology that is really, really useful, but it's also a technology that has vulnerabilities. The US went and I apologise if there's any US in the room. You can tell why I'm not a member of the diplomatic corps. The US tried or decided to move away from what they still call legacy UHF into a MUOS, so a different approach, a different waveform for tactical communications. It has been beset with challenges, let's put it that way. The real problem is it is not interoperable with every other nation that uses legacy UHF. So if I go back to we fight alongside our partners, we fight alongside NATO, we fight alongside allies. We always need to make certain that we can interoperate. It's not about collaboration, it's about interoperability. So I would love to move away from legacy UHF because of its vulnerabilities and its jamming. I can only do that if NATO moves to something else and we move to something jointly. But also I need to recognise I've got no idea how many UHF terminals and handsets I have out there, because largely the frontline commands buy those as commodities. If I suddenly say, right, we're going to do something fundamentally different from 2030 for UHF, and it'll be better and it won't get jammed and everything else, I've got a huge business change I need to do across defence that I don't have money for. So UHF, or tactical communications, it is probably one of the most important, because it is the thing that saves lives. It's the one thing that you use to call in airstrike. It's the one thing that you use to call in medevac. If it's not there, people die instantly. So getting the right technology for tactical communications capability, that is work that we are looking on. But we recognise we probably need to continue with what I refer to as heritage. I don't like legacy. What heritage UHF, along with our partners, until we can agree what a better, more modern capability is.
Very good. So we'll end on this question and we'll take it back to the serious end of things. I was at a conference, used to be US in New York, a Satcom it was called, and that kind of had a ground segment feel about it, and but things were very different there then. Now we have the LEOs in place, we have the multi-orbit type thing, and it's a different kind of ballpark out there. And the general there on that day, I'll not mention his name, but he said, if war breaks out, we might not have space there. You know, we might not be fighting actually with space. How does that play out today?
So that's really interesting. That sounds a lot more interesting than what I'm going to say. So that's really interesting, because I was at a conference where the four-star combatant commander for Indo-PACOM US, so one of the 11 operational commands, was asked a question about the importance of satellite-based communications or long-haul-based communications in his area of operations. And he said, if I lose space, I lose the war. Because because the dependency we now have on long-haul communications, secure communications, has gone through the roof. When we go back a bit, when we had the Ark Royal style of of aircraft carrier, we put 2 meg onto her, and she could operate very happily with 2 meg. When we're talking about planning for the task force that's down in the Indo-Pacific at the moment, their ideal IER is about 100 meg, because the need for, and the reliance now on things like secure comms for operational command and control, unmanned air vehicles or unmanned vehicles, high volume of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance data. So the whole shift of war is now very much information and data-centric. The one area in defence, under the Defence Review, that has got an uplift, or is expecting an uplift, is the digital-centric side. We are creating something called the digital targeting web, which is basically how do you connect sensors to decision makers and to effectors rapidly. So the reliance on space as an operational domain is increasing. An attack on spacecraft is now defined as an Article 5 event by NATO. So that whole attack on one nation is attack on all now includes space. So that indicates the significant shift of space as being an enabler to actually space now being part of the fighting domain. And I say I go back to the Admiral's comment, if I lose space, I lose the war.
Barry, thank you very much for coming along here today. Could we have a big round of applause for Barry Austin?